We have big AI news out of Google, one of the top AI companies that has a lot of exciting stuff going on. And the thing that everyone is talking about today is the fact that they are bringing a new quote unquote Canvas feature, similar to what ChatGPT is doing with their Canvas feature, to their Gemini platform. And they're also doing some audio overviews. So there's a ton of interesting stuff going on here. Today on the show, we will be breaking down all of that. I got to kick this over to Jamie. But before I do, I wanted to say, if you haven't already, Jamie and I have an exclusive school community where every single week we record a piece of bonus content that we don't share anywhere else. And essentially, we break down all of the different strategies, the ways we use AI tools to grow and scale our businesses. So it is currently $19 a month to join that. In the past, we've had it at like $100, but we have a discount running now. So if you have ever wanted to grow and scale your business using AI tools, we would love to have you as a member of the school community. We share all sorts of exclusive stuff there that we don't share with anyone else, anywhere else. So it's a great place to be. All right, Jamie, tell me what you think is interesting about everything Google's doing. This is some crazy stuff.
Yeah, so they're kind of playing catch up in a way to ChatGPT. As we had mentioned, they also have a Canvas tool along with Anthropic has their artifacts. They're all kind of doing the exact same thing, which is being able to just lay out your results that you get from your prompts in just a really helpful way, specifically if you're trying to do coding. But I actually just was playing around with Gemini, and I feel like there's a lot of new features that have just kind of been released and have been really, they're just kind of helpful in whatever you're doing. So, but yeah, the example in the article was it said, I'm new to coding. Can you code a tic-tac-toe game for me? And then explain the different parts to it. So it did the tic-tac-toe game, and then it actually put it on the canvas so you can see a visual of it. And then it went through explaining how it did each step. So I just thought that was really a great way, if you're interested in coding, not just having ChatGPT make it for you and then you copy paste, but actually to learn it. It's really helpful to have that side-by-side canvas view. But I'm going to share my screen with you because I have been just kind of testing out Gemini and just some of their, new features. The one thing I was excited about, and it sounded like they were going to basically allow for Notebook LM just to be like free range and everyone could use it, unlimited through Gemini, but it actually is not the case. So I found that that's still only available through if you have a premium memberships.
Gotcha.
That's okay. But that was in the news article that it was going to be, released to, just in the Gemini app. But right here, I wanted to show you, this is if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, but I have my Canvas pulled up here, and it had me, it came up with it says, come up with a blog post about visiting Paris. And so what I have selected right now is actually a really casual tone. So this is a new feature, at least that I have just discovered, but in the bottom right-hand corner, you can change tone, and it just has a nice little slider. So if you don't like the super casual tone, you can drag it to more formal or even very formal, and it'll rewrite the article in that tone for you. And then it has it on this canvas here, like we said before, which is really helpful if you are sharing, so you can export it to Google Docs and share this. If it's in its final draft and you want to publish it, you can export it to Google Docs, or you can even share your canvas with others and edit it alongside with them. So really just kind of a handy tool. The other thing I wanted to mention, I use my phone. I use the Gemini app on my phone, and I just wanted to see if there was any, kind of new features. I just uploaded a picture of my bathroom remodel I'm working on at my Airbnb, and I said, make me a podcast about this picture. I didn't even explain what the picture was, but it actually came up with a really descriptive podcast, like a script for a podcast, and even like intro music ideas and stuff like that to make the podcast. And then you can actually have it read through with you. It's not the same as Notebook LM, where it has two people having a conversation, two AIs. It's just it reads through it, but either way, it came up with a really nice and very accurate to my project podcast. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. But Jaeden, what do you think about all the Canvas feature? Do you think you'll use Gemini more now because of this?
So, I mean, the thing that I think is interesting, like you kind of mentioned, like they're playing catch up in a way, and they're kind of copying. I mean, OpenAI came out with this, and Anthropic came up with a version of this. This is very similar to what ChatGPT has done with their Canvas, a tool essentially. The one thing that I think Google really has going for it, and the reason why myself and you listening might be interested in this more than like, oh look, they're doing something like ChatGPT, is because of that thing you mentioned, Jamie, which is the export to Google Docs. Now, I don't know about you, but I would say for me, 90% of the time when I'm working on something with ChatGPT, like if I'm using that for a website or for a business, like I don't usually copy and paste straight out of ChatGPT. Sometimes I do, but if it's like a longer document and I definitely am working with other things, like I'm putting it somewhere else. And that's for me, that's Google Docs. I know maybe some people might use Microsoft, but for me, Google Docs is just the easiest. So I'm always using that. And I think that that's the golden ticket there for Google, because right now I copy and paste my ChatGPT prompts or outputs. I paste it into Google Docs. I work with it there. I add headings and change a contract and make a thing, whatever I'm working on. This just automatically exports. And I think that's where they can get people, because otherwise, like, it's essentially the same thing as ChatGPT. It's a few months later, even that like tone thing, which I do think is really cool. The other thing I wanted to mention though on the tone thing, I think that's really cool. You can make it more formal, less formal. All they're doing though, and I think there's tons of value to this, is they're adding a UI interface for essentially like prompt engineering. And essentially when you're saying, like, when you have that little slider where you say more formal or a little less formal, I think for the average user, all they're thinking is like, this is the little slider dial that controls how formal it is. All it's doing though is when you send it a prompt, it's just adding at the beginning of the prompt, make this semi-formal, make this extremely formal, make this casual, make this semi-casual, make this insanely casual, right? Like, it's so funny that like we have this like these UI elements, these sliders that they're adding all these like different features, and all it is creative prompting. So the basic thing is like there's no really new technology being invented here, but I do think that there's a ton of benefit to making the UI better, because this is more usable for you and me. And if you don't want to have to mess with a prompt, you can click a couple sliders and kind of set your settings, maybe save your settings, right? Look, I'm working for this really professional bank. Everything just seems to be very formal. Just set it's very formal. I'm just going to leave it there. And that's nice. You don't have to put at the beginning of every single prompt, make this very formal, like you're talking at a bank, right? Like you just set it. So I think the UI is actually fantastic. Making it more usable, I think, is really cool. And then I think that with the export to Google Docs, it's going to be great. Now, when they had their like whole blog post, they outlined one, like they were kind of like giving examples of when you might actually use this. I thought it was funny um, because half the time I would assume when you make a blog post about your new tool or feature you have, you want to make something revolutionary, but literally in their thing, it's like, for example, um, highlight a paragraph and ask Gemini to make it more concise, professional, or informal. And it's like, okay, it's like, I don't know, that seems like a very basic example. It's like, if you want to collaborate with others on content, you can export it to Google Docs with a click. That actually seems interesting. So I feel like it's kind of this mix up. When you're playing catch up, it's hard because it's like they caught up to ChatGPT, but now I'm not wowed by whatever they're doing that's the same as ChatGPT. I'm like, oh, come on, it's came out months ago. But all in all, I think for the ecosystem, it's cool when they make these updates. They are doing some cool stuff, and I am definitely excited. You talked at the beginning about the code thing. I do think the code is kind of cool. Again, other people are doing this, but essentially opening up the side panel where you can tell it to write some code and it's actually generating it, like in the example that you made of like a tic-tac-toe game, it actually has to display what the code looks like live. So it's actually running the code in the box. And I think that's very cool. Not a lot of places are doing that, but there are a handful, and ChatGPT and of course Claude are spearheading that. So now they're on par with them. The thing I'm really looking out for, of course, is a brand new flagship model out of Gemini, but it doesn't seem like they're falling too far behind on some of the software stuff. So to me, I think that's kind of exciting. I don't know. For you, do you think this is going to be something that would get you switching over to Google Gemini, or it's just kind of a nice to have if you're already using it?
Well, I think for the average person or for someone who's just kind of getting their feet wet with AI, Gemini might be actually easier for them to use. Kind of like what we said, we talked heavily about a year ago, is that in order to have a good response from ChatGPT, you need to have a good prompt. And so kind of eliminating some of that with the sliders and making it just easier to use, I think will make it more accessible to someone who's just starting out. And again, I think integrating it with other tools like Google Docs that we all use, pretty much every single day, is going to make it the workflow side of things easier. And so I do think I would actually end up using Gemini more as they continue to develop their stuff.
Super cool. Okay, I just want to read one last thing really quickly on the audio overview that you kind of talked about to give people an idea of what this is, because this is kind of big news today out of Google as well. So this is out of TechCrunch. TechCrunch said, as with audio overview in Notebook LM, audio overview in Gemini accepts files and content in a range of formats. Uploading a document via the prompt bar will trigger the audio overview shortcut. And once a summary is generated, it can be downloaded or shared via the Gemini app or the web or on web or mobile. So essentially you can upload stuff and it's going to give you like an audio overview of the topic, like you mentioned with your picture, but you could do this with like business documents. You could do this with all sorts of documents or things that you're working on, projects, and it's going to give you like an idea where you can like listen to it. I think this is interesting. If you're on the go, it's interesting. It's interesting that you can download it to me, because like you mentioned, you said turn it into a podcast, and so I was able to do that. You want to download that, and so I think like people might kind of start using this as a shortcut to download files and make podcasts or other kind of audio content, which I think is kind of interesting. And then they said both Canvas that we've been talking about this whole time and also the audio overview, these are going to be available for free in Gemini for Gemini users around the world as of Tuesday. Check, because it may not have rolled out for you. I know they're working on it. Sometimes these things take a little bit of time to roll out. Canvas's code preview feature is only on the web right now, so you're not going to get that on your mobile app, which makes sense. You're kind of running code. You kind of need like 2 windows, in my opinion, for that, at least on your screen. But the audio overviews, the last thing I want to say is these are limited only in English for now. So might do other languages, but for now, these are just in English. Overall, this is exciting. Google's making some big moves. And if you're a Gemini user, this is going to be interesting for you. I do think, honestly, especially if they're doing audio overview for free, so you can make some free podcasts and get some free audio, like that's kind of cool, because 11 Labs isn't free. And if you use it a lot, it's not cheap. So this might be a good hack there if you're trying to make a lot of audio content and you don't want to have to pay for it. It's also cool to have the download, because I've used a bunch of, I'm trying to think if ChatGPT even lets you download, like when you do like voice chats, if it lets you download the responses and stuff. I'm not sure if it does. So if not, this is a kind of a good hack to get AI generated audio for free, that you can download, use for a podcast, use for voiceover on a video, use for different projects. That's kind of cool. Hey, thank you so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you enjoyed it, the number one thing you could do is leave us a rating and a review wherever you get your reviews. And of course, join the AI Hustle School community. We'd love to see you there, help you grow and scale your business with AI tools. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.